The Tokyo subway sarin attack, usually referred to in the Japanese media as the Subway Sarin Incident, was an act of domestic terrorism perpetrated on March 20, 1995 in Tokyo, Japan by members of the cult movement Aum Shinrikyo. In 5 coordinated attacks, the perpetrators released sarin on several lines of the Tokyo subway during the rush hour, killing 12 people, severely injuring 50 and causing temporary vision problems for nearly 1,000 others. The attack was directed against trains passing through Kasumigaseki and Nagaticho, home to the Japanese government. It is the most serious attack to occur in Japan since the end of World War II. Background: Aum Shinrikyo is the former name of a controversial group now known as Aleph. In 1992, Shoko Asahara, the founder of Aum Shinrikyo, published a book in which he declared himself Christ, Japan's only fully enlightened master, and identified with the Lamb of God. He outlined a doomsday prophecy, which included a Third World War, and described a final conflict culminating in a nuclear Armageddon. Borrowing the term from the Book of Revelation chapter 16 verse 16, his purported mission was to take upon himself the sins of the world, and he claimed he could transfer to his followers spiritual power, and ultimately take away their sins and bad works. He also saw dark conspiracies everywhere promulgated by Jews, Freemasons, the Dutch, the British royal family, and rival Japanese religions. Initially, the Japanese police reported the attack as the cult's way of hastening an apocalypse. The prosecution said that it was an attempt to bring down the government and install Shoko Asahara, the group's founder, as the Emperor of Japan. Asahara's defense team claimed that certain senior members of the group independently planned the attack, but their motives for this were left unexplained. Aum Shinrikyo first began their attacks on 27 June 1994 in Matsumoto, Japan, with the help of a converted refrigerated truck. Members of the cult released a cloud of sarin which floated near the homes of judges who were overseeing a lawsuit concerning a real estate dispute, which was predicted to go against the cult. From this one event, 500 people were injured and 7 people died. Main perpetrators: Naroko Kikuchi, who was involved in producing the sarin gas, was arrested after a tip-off in June 2012, and Katsuya Takahashi soon thereafter. 10 men were responsible for carrying out the attacks. 5 released the sarin, while the other 5 served as getaway drivers. The teams were Ikuo Hayashi. Prior to joining Aum, Hayashi was a senior medical doctor with an active, frontline, track record at the Ministry of Science and Technology. The son of a doctor, Hayashi graduated from Kaya University. He was a heart and artery specialist at Kaya Hospital, which he left to become head of circulatory medicine at the National Sanatorium Hospital in Tokai, Ibaraki. In 1990, he resigned his job and left his family to join Aum in the monastic order Sangha, where he became one of Asahara's favorites and was appointed the group's Minister of Healing, as which he was responsible for administering a variety of treatments to Aum members, including sodium pentothal and electric shocks to those whose loyalty was suspect. These treatments resulted in several deaths. Due to his actions in reporting to the Japanese police investigators about the sarin attacks and Aum activities post-Tokyo subway attack, Hayashi was exempted from death sentence and was instead given life imprisonment. Tomomitsu Nimi, who was his getaway driver, received the death sentence due to his involvement in other crimes perpetrated by Aum members. Kenichi Hirose was 30 years old at the time of the attacks, holder of a postgraduate degree in physics from Waseda University. Hirose became an important member of the group's chemical brigade in their Ministry of Science and Technology. He was also involved in the group's automatic light weapon development scheme. Hirose teamed up with getaway driver Koichi Katamura. After releasing the sarin, Hirose himself showed symptoms of sarin poisoning. He was able to inject himself with the antidote and was rushed to the AUM-affiliated Shinrikyo Hospital in Nakano for treatment. Medical personnel at the given hospital had not been given prior notice of the attack and were consequently clueless regarding what treatment Hirose needed. When Katamura realized that he had driven Hirose to the hospital in vain, he instead drove to AUM's headquarters in Shibuya where Ikuo Hayashi gave Hirose first aid. Hirose's appeal of his death sentence was rejected by the Tokyo High Court on July 28, 2003. The sentence was upheld by the Supreme Court of Japan on November 6, 2009. Katamura was sentenced to life imprisonment. Toru Toyoda was 27 at the time of the attack. He studied applied physics at University of Tokyo's Science Department and graduated with honors. He also holds a master's degree, and was about to begin doctoral studies when he joined AUM, where he belonged to the Chemical Brigade in their Ministry of Science and Technology. Toyoda was sentenced to death. The appeal of his death sentence was rejected by the Tokyo High Court on July 28, 2003, and was upheld by the Supreme Court on November 6, 2009. Katsuya Takahashi was Toru Toyoda's getaway driver. Takahashi was arrested in June 2012. Masato Yokoyama was 31 at the time of the attack. He was a graduate in applied physics from Tokai University's engineering department. He worked for an electronics firm for 3 years after graduation before leaving to join AUM, where he became undersecretary at the group's Ministry of Science and Technology. He was also involved in their automatic light weapons manufacturing scheme. Yokoyama was sentenced to death in 1999. Kiyotaka Tonizaki, a high school graduate who joined the group in 1987, was a member of the group's Ministry of Construction, and served as Yokoyama's getaway driver. Tonizaki was sentenced to life imprisonment. Yasuo Hayashi was 37 years old at the time of the attacks, and was the oldest person at the group's Ministry of Science and Technology. He studied artificial intelligence at Kogakuin University. After graduation he traveled to India where he studied yoga. He then became an AUM member, taking vows in 1988 and rising to the number 3 position in the group's Ministry of Science and Technology. Asahara had at one time suspected Hayashi of being a spy. The extra packet of sarin he carried was part of ritual character test, set up by Asahara to prove his allegiance, according to the prosecution. Hayashi went on the run after the attacks. He was arrested 21 months later, 1,000 miles from Tokyo on Ishigaki Island. He was later sentenced to death and has appealed. Hayashi's getaway driver was Shigeo Sugimoto. His lawyers argued that he played only a minor role in the attack, but the argument was rejected and he has been sentenced to death. On Monday, March 20, 1995, 5 members of AUM Shinrikyo launched a chemical attack on the Tokyo subway, one of the world's busiest commuter transport systems, at the peak of the morning rush hour. The chemical agent used, liquid sarin, was contained in plastic bags which each team then wrapped in newspaper. Each perpetrator carried 2 packets totaling approximately 9 liters of sarin, except Yasuo Hayashi, who carried 3 bags totaling approximately 1.3 liters of sarin. AUM originally planned to spread the sarin as an aerosol but did not follow through with it. A single drop of sarin the size of a pinhead can kill an adult. Carrying their packets of sarin and umbrellas with sharpened tips, the perpetrators boarded their appointed trains. At prearranged stations, the sarin packets were dropped and punctured several times with the sharpened tip of the umbrella. Each perpetrator then got off the train and exited the station to meet his accomplice with a car. By leaving the punctured packets on the floor, the sarin was allowed to leak out into the train car and stations. This sarin affected passengers, subway workers, and those who came into contact with them. Sarin is the most volatile of the nerve agents, which means that it can quickly and easily evaporate from a liquid into a vapor and spread into the environment. People can be exposed to the vapor even if they do not come in contact with the liquid form of sarin. Because it evaporates so quickly, sarin presents an immediate but short-lived threat. Chiyoda Line. The team of Ikuo Hayashi and Tomomitsu Nimi were assigned to drop and puncture 2 sarin packets on the Chiyoda Line. Hayashi was the perpetrator and Nimi was his getaway driver. On the way to Sendaji Station, Nimi purchased newspapers to wrap the sarin packets in, the Japan Communist Party's Akahata and the Soka Gakkai's Seikyo Shimbun. Hayashi eventually chose to use Akahata, wearing a surgical mask commonly worn by the Japanese during cold and flu season. Hayashi boarded the first car of southwest-bound 748 Chiyoda Line train number A725K. As the train approached Shinochanomizu Station, the central business district in Chiyoda, he punctured one of his 2 bags of sarin, leaving the other untouched, and exited the train at Shinochanomizu. The train proceeded down the line with the punctured bag of sarin leaking until 4 stops later at Kasumigaseki Station. There, the bags were removed and eventually disposed of by station attendants, of whom 2 died. The train continued on to the next station where it was completely stopped, evacuated and cleaned. Marunouchi Line Ogakubo bound 2 men, Kenichi Hirose and Koichi Katamura, were assigned to release 2 sarin packets on the westbound Marunouchi Line destined for Ogakubo Station. The pair left AUM headquarters in Shibuya at 6 a.m. and drove to Yotsuya Station. Their Hirose boarded a westbound Marunouchi Line train, then changed to a northbound Junior East Saikyo Line train at Shinjuku Station and got off at Ikebukuro Station. He then bought a sports tabloid to wrap the sarin packets in and boarded the second car of Marunouchi Line train A777. As he was about to release the sarin, Hirose believed the loud noises caused by the newspaper-wrapped packets had caught the attention of a school girl. To avoid further suspicion, he got off the train at either Mayagadani or Karakuen Station and moved to the third car instead of the second. As the train approached Tochanomizu Station, Hirose dropped the packets to the floor, repeated an AUM mantra and punctured the sarin packets with so much force that he bent the tip of his sharpened umbrella. Both packets were successfully broken, and all 900 milliliters of sarin was released onto the floor of the train. Hirose then departed the train at Ochanomizu and left via Katamura's car waiting outside the station. At Nakano Sakawa Station, 14 stops later, 2 severely injured passengers were carried out of the train car, while station attendant Sumio Nishimura removed the sarin packets. The train continued with sarin still on the floor of the third car. 5 stops later, at 8:38 a.m., the train reached Ogakubo Station, the end of the Marunouchi Line, all the while passengers boarding the train. The train continued eastbound until it was finally taken out of service at Shinkoenji Station 2 stops later. The entire ordeal resulted in 1 passenger's death with 358 being seriously injured. Ikebukuro-bound Masato Yokoyama and his driver Kiyotaka Tonizaki were assigned to release sarin on the Ikebukuro-bound Marunouchi Line. On the way to Shinjuku Station, Tonizaki stopped to allow Yokoyama to buy a copy of Nippon Keizai Shimbun, to wrap the 2 sarin packets. When they arrived at the station, Yokoyama put on a wig and fake glasses and boarded the 5th car of the Ikebukuro-bound 739 Marunouchi Line train number B801. As the train approached Yotsuya Station, Yokoyama began poking at the sarin packets. When the train reached the next station, he fled the scene with Tonozaki, leaving the sarin packets on the train car. The packets were not fully punctured. During his drop, Yokoyama left one packet fully intact, while the other packet was only punctured once, resulting in the sarin being released relatively slowly. The train reached the end of the line, Ikebukuro, at 8:30 a.m. where it would head back in the opposite direction. Before it departed, the train was evacuated and searched, but the searchers failed to discover the sarin packets. One passenger attributes this oversight to the fact that the search was conducted by a part-time employee instead of a full-time train assistant. The train departed Ikebukuro station at 8:32 a.m. as the Shinjuku-bound A801. Passengers soon became ill and alerted station attendants of the sarin-soaked newspapers at Karakuen Station. One station later, at Hongo Sanchoma, staff removed the sarin packets and mopped the floor, but the train continued on to Shinjuku. After arriving at 9:09 a.m., the train once again began to make its way back to Ikebukuro as the B901. The train was finally put out of service at Kokai Gijidome Station in Chiyoda at 9:27 a.m., 1 hour and 40 minutes after Yokoyama punctured the sarin packet. The attack resulted in no fatalities, but over 200 people were left in serious condition. Hibiya Line Tabudobitsu-bound Toru Toyoda and his driver Katsuya Takahashi were assigned to release sarin on the northeast-bound Hibiya Line. The pair, with Takahashi driving, left AUM headquarters in Shibuya at 6:30 a.m. After purchasing a copy of Hochi Shimbun and wrapping his 2 sarin packets, Toyoda arrived at Nakameguro Station where he boarded the first car of northeast-bound 759 Hibiya Line train number B711T. Sitting close to the door, he set the sarin packets on the floor. When the train arrived at the next station, Ebisu, Toyoda punctured the packets and got off the train. He was on the train for a total of 2 minutes, by far the quickest sarin drop out of the 5 attacks that day. 2 stops later, at Roppongi Station, passengers in the train's first car began to feel the effects of the sarin and began to open the windows. By Kamiyacho Station, the next stop, the passengers in the car had begun panicking. The first car was evacuated and several passengers were immediately taken to a hospital. Still, with the first car empty, the train continued down the line for one more stop until it was completely evacuated at Kasumigaseki Station. This attack killed 1 person and seriously injured 532 others. Nakameguro-bound Yasuo Hayashi and Shigeo Sugimoto were the team assigned to drop sarin on the southwest-bound Hibiya Line departing Kita-Senju Station for Nakameguro Station. Unlike the rest of the attacks, Hayashi carried 3 sarin packets onto the train instead of 2. Prior to the attack, Hayashi asked to carry a flawed leftover packet in addition to the 2 others in an apparent bid to allay suspicions and prove his loyalty to the group. After Sugimoto escorted him to Ueno Station, Hayashi boarded the third car of southwest-bound 743 Hibiya Line train number A720S and dropped his sarin packets to the floor. 2 stops later, at Akihabara Station, he punctured the packets, left the train, and arrived back at AUM headquarters with Sugimoto by 8:30 a.m. Hayashi made the most punctures of any of the perpetrators. By the next stop, passengers in the third car began to feel effects from the sarin. Noticing the large, liquid-soaked package on the floor and assuming it was the culprit, one passenger kicked the sarin packets out of the train and onto Kodanmako Station's subway platform. 4 people in the station died as a result. A puddle of sarin remained on the floor of the passenger car as the train continued to the next station. At 8:10 a.m., after the train pulled out of Hachobori Station, a passenger in the third car pressed the emergency stop button. The train was in a tunnel at the time, and was forced to proceed to Tsukiji Station. where passengers stumbled out and collapsed on the station's platform, and the train was taken out of service. The attack was originally believed to be an explosion and was thus labeled as such in media reports. Eventually, station attendants realized that the attack was not an explosion, but rather a chemical attack. At 8:35 a.m., the Hibiya line was completely shut down and all commuters were evacuated. Between the 5 stations affected in this attack, 8 people died and 275 were seriously injured.